Writer's Corner is made possible thanks to the following sponsors. Jaime's Haberdashery of St. Paul has become an anchor of the downtown business community. A modern store with classic decor, it provides everything in clothing, both custom and tailored, plus offers a huge selection for both men and women. There is now also a Jaime's in Red Wing. Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forums. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with his authors in realizing a book's potential.
And welcome back to Writer's Corner. Alan Miller with you, and I hope I will have very little to say because we have two very talented writers with us. Newell Searle, who is on my left, didn't know that he had a lot in common with Rob Jung, but they're both agrarians. They both grew up on farms, and they both have very checkered backgrounds and ended up as fiction writers and really mystery writers. Newell's background goes from Macalester University to the University of Minnesota, and he was actually Minnesota's Deputy Commissioner of Agriculture. Speaking of agrarians, Rob has been a little bit of everything. He's an attorney, he's a fisherman, he's a connoisseur of wines, and what else can I say? He's written a series of books, and his latest, Judgment Day, came out as a trilogy. Gentlemen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Alan. Newell, you wrote nonfiction, and so what propelled you into the realm of fiction and particularly mysteries?
Well, I wrote history. Is where I started, and I published an award-winning book on a historical topic and some articles, and then I went on into public policy and papers. But that wasn't as satisfying after a while, and so when I finished active career, I didn't exactly wake up and say I want to write fiction, but I wanted to write something not constrained by the rules of scholarship and argumentation, rhetoric. So I sort of backed into it, and I started writing a novel, working through grief after my mother's death, put it away, brought it out when my dad died, worked on it some more, and then decided to get serious, and by the time I was retired.
So this is your first novel?
This is my first novel, first of a trilogy. And there's each is a standalone, but there's an overriding story arc to the three of them. It's something of an homage to my origins in southern Minnesota. It's set in the mid-1980s during the farm crisis. It's set at a time when, just before our urban-rural cultural fracture is evident. It's just right there at the cusp of when urban people no longer have as many contacts with rural relatives and rural associations as they had, say, in the 1960s or the 1950s. And so it's a kind of it's a look at life, just at kind of a moment the present moment we don't see coming.
Okay. Now,
And mystery.
Yeah, and then there's a mystery.
Has to be.
There has to be mystery.
Has to be a mystery.
everything's a mystery.
Well, did you want me to just say?
Well, I was just going to say, Rob just finished the third of his trilogy, Judgment Day, and sort of a different approach.
Well, it is a story that started out as a standalone, and as I got to the end of the first book was called The Reaper, and the story starts with the disappearance of a painting at the 1937 Paris World's Fair. The painting was a painting by a Spanish artist named Joan Moreau, and the name of the painting in English is The Reaper, thus the name of the book. So it started out with that missing painting, and I thought it was going to be a book, another standalone, and instead the story ended with a murder. And you can't end a story with a murder. You got to solve the murder, right? So I wrote the sequel, which is The Sower, and that is the story of a all-woman detective agency who is charged with trying to solve the murder after it's a cold case. Judgment Day came out this past June, and it is the story of the first U.S. senator ever to be charged with murder. It's a woman, and it is the continuation of this story that this painting plays there's the thread through the long story. So I write from the seat of my pants. I find it exciting to find out what's going on, and I have new characters pop up, and stories take turns I don't expect. How about you, Newell? How do you?
Pretty much the same. I do not know the end of the story until I write it, and then I may rewrite it. And then I go back and rewrite the beginning in order to match the ending, because sometimes the characters take the story. And I believe the characters, I don't, you asked if I outlined, I don't outline, because I don't know what the characters are going to tell me until they do. And at times, there's just a moment of insight or something where a character speaks to me in a way and says, no, I want to do it this way. And so I have, one of the villains meets his end in a way that I hadn't foreseen, but then all of a sudden, there it was. And I thought, yes. And there's irony in it, too.
When I wrote The Reaper took about 7 years. The reason being, I wrote The Reaper, I got about 150 pages into it, and I suddenly thought, I just wrote the ending of the book, and it's only 150 pages long. Yes. But the story then took off in a direction I didn't expect. And by the time that part of the story ended up, I was 425 pages deep in it, and I handed it to beta readers, and they said it was a good book up until about 150 pages, and then it got boring. So sometimes those twists and turns don't necessarily make the book better.
Now, your current book, Judgment Day, which is just out, is somewhat prophetic because it's about a senator, and as we sit here today, a U.S. senator has just been indicted in a massive indictment by the Southern District of New York, and certainly a selling point.
It is a coincidence. Our politics is extremely messy, and no, that's not news to anybody right now, and probably the most messy since the Civil War. And so anytime you write about politics, there's a fairly good chance that if you write something that isn't necessarily all light and roses, that you're going to run across it in today's political world. Yeah. And this so happens that this is a reflection of what happened today.
Now, Newell, you have written award-winning works in nonfiction,
right,
and a lot in nonfiction. Was it difficult for you to transition to fiction?
Yes and no. No, because in terms of framing a story and creating a congruent world or congruent invented facts for that world, that's like history, only it's a little bit harder because history has all the facts are already there. You just got to reassemble them. Fiction, you've got to create those and then you reassemble them. The difficult part for me as a nonfiction writer was making the transition to thinking less objectively, to think subjectively, to write so that the reader could play with doubts, interpretations, possibilities. When you're writing nonfiction, you don't want those. You want it really clear. I want you to understand exactly what I'm saying. You want fiction to be messier. You want the reader to go off, say, well, maybe it's this, and then you surprise them later on. Yeah. Learning that is difficult. That's like another language.
And Rob, as an attorney, How did you come about starting to write fiction?
I came about starting to write fiction because of my grandchildren, because before I was a fiction writer, I was a storyteller. And one year for Christmas, when my two oldest grandkids, who are now in their late 20s, were about in the 3rd and 4th grade, I gave them Thursdays with Grandpa. And I'd pick them up after school and take them over to Cold Stone Creamery and ruin their dinner, and then I'd tell them stories. And it would be, we developed a whole series of stories with them as characters in the stories, which was kind of cool. And we did that for a couple of years. And then when they got to be teenagers, they said, "Grandpa, did you ever write any of those down?" And I thought, no, but maybe I should have. And that's sort of what started me to write fiction. And I started about, 15 years ago, maybe 12, 14. I haven't kept track.
Have either of those grandchildren become writers?
No, neither one. They're much smarter than that.
Now, what about research in terms of writing? Do you find that your law background helped you with research? Because I sure do find that was my story.
I think that I love to do research, and like Newell, I'm a historian. I'm not a historian by degree, but a historian by love of history and geography. And so I do a lot of research as I write. I write 5 or 6 hours a day, and I would guess that at least 2 hours of that is spent in research. Did my law? I'm sure it did. I mean, it taught you how to analyze things and make, fit the jigsaw puzzle together and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, but I love to do research. I think that's half the fun of it.
Yeah, I really do. I agree with you there. Now, this novel that you have out now is #1 of a trilogy,
right,
as opposed to the conclusion, and we'll talk about what's down the pike for Rob, but what's coming next?
What's coming next, it'll come out later this fall, is called Leif's Legacy, and it's about two brothers, one an elderly ex-forest ranger who lives on the family homestead on a spring-fed lake in the terminal moraine of my fictitious county, and his much younger brother, who is a wealthy doctor, and they don't see eye to eye on the future of the homestead, even though the doctor doesn't own it. But his wife, who's an attorney, she has ideas about how to get title to it because they can develop it for $9 or $10 million worth of homes on a private lake. And when the wily forest ranger leaves the property to a young protege who's a college history professor, we're off to the races.
Well, who's murdered?
Well, I don't want to spoil it, but
Okay.
let's say it comes at an unexpected place from an unexpected quarter.
That's the best way with these books.
Yeah.
How's it it's part of a trilogy, but how's it connected to the copy desk murders?
There are 3 main characters. The 3 characters here are the focus of the story and their reconciliation with each other and themselves. And the mystery is merely the vehicle to set them in motion.
Yeah.
And yeah, they resolve that. But they are also critical to resolving this next 2, but they are not the focus. The focus is on other people, other characters, but it's their connections, it's their presence that moves the story around. So they're more the vehicle.
Okay.
But I introduce new characters with new problems.
Basically the same locale.
Same locale. Locale is important too.
So is location a character for you?
It is.
Okay.
It is. I'll tell you. The fictitious county is Alton County. That's the name of the township I grew up in. The main lake in the county is called Lake Iosco. That's the name of a township in the county I grew up in. But I also plucked Featherstone, which is the principal town. That's a township in Goodhue County. Rockdale is a locale in Dodge County. So I picked these obscure place names and used them.
And of course, it's all fictitious because
Yes.
we make sure that we.
There's no persons in there that
Right.
are real.
Right. Now, what's coming down the pike from you?
Well, immediately there is another book with some of these same characters, but it's a different story arc. It is. It will be at least 2 books that I know of. It starts with a art theft, and tied back to the Gardner Museum art theft in Boston about 25 years ago. There's a historical thread that runs through that doesn't get a lot of play. I mean, they talk about it was a $500 million art heist, supposedly the biggest in history back then, and it was very peculiar in how it was done. And there was another one that never got any press in the U.S. in Bruges that followed the same modus operandi 10 years later. And so I picked up on that, and I do the art theft in this one to follow it again, and I follow that to the point where the reason none of the art has ever been recovered is it's used for something that you don't really imagine it's going to be used for. It's used as collateral for illicit financial transactions. But that's not the story. The story is as the investigation of the art theft comes about, the people who are investigating it accidentally trip over a domestic terrorist plot. And I'll leave it at that because I'm a pantser and I know what the plot is and I know what's supposed to happen, but that's a long way deep in the story. The character who is primarily involved in the investigation is the same character that was involved in the investigation in The Sower, the middle book of this trilogy. Ronnie Brilliant, who is a transgender private eye. And so Ronnie will make a reappearance and will become the other character that is from this trilogy is Henri Hawk, and they have a relationship like Holmes and Moriarty, and that develops further in this 2-book series. At least I think it's going to be 2 books.
Now, you speak of Hawk. You are actually a publisher, and what's the name of your publishing company?
It's called Hawk Hill Literary.
Just a coincidence.
Just a coincidence. Actually, It is a
Okay.
coincidence because the two names aren't connected. So.
And it's interesting now. You have published with Calumet, as have I, which is a boutique publisher, basically. How do you go about getting your books read? What do you have to do? And I know you both do a lot of traveling around to book showings and signings and things like that. So why don't you tell us how you really become popular?
That's mostly a wish. You tag along with people who are already popular. You know, you do things like host a TV show, or because it gives you exposure, and that's what we're all looking for.
Hasn't helped me.
Well, hopefully over time the exposure. Problem is with you and me, Alan, is that we don't necessarily have all that much time. But the exposure is what we're looking for. And I always analogize it to publishing is like a big beach. You know, there's about 1.6 million books a year that are published. And they're like pebbles of sand on a beach. And all we're trying to do is get our little pebble, one of the 1.6 million, just to kind of stick its head up there just a little bit more than the rest of them so that somebody trips over it, decides to look at it and buy it. I do a lot of personal appearances. I do Minnesota Mystery Night. We know about that. We're going to turn that into a radio show. I spend a lot of time. I mentor people. It's just you kind of get immersed in it. Just came back from BoucherCon in San Diego, or the World Mystery Conference. So you meet other authors, other editors, publishers.
Now, Newell, I know tomorrow you have a book signing.
I have a book signing. Last Saturday I did
A reading and a signing?
a reading and signing, yeah.
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 which seem to be pretty popular. You've done quite a few of them with
Not
this
that
book.
many, just starting.
Where's tomorrow so that people know?
Well, tomorrow I'll be at Pleasant Valley Orchard in Schaefer, and it's the the St. Croix Valley Writers Group. So there'll be a series of presentations. Last Saturday I was in Red Wing at.
In fact, we were all in Red Wing.
We were in Rosemont, yes.
Rosemont, yes.
I was
Excuse me.
in Red Wing before that at Fair Trade Books.
Fair Trade Books, one of my best bookstores.
Yeah. And then I'm going to be in Waseca on the 28th, where for the Friends of the Waseca Lesueur Library having their meeting, and I'm the chicken on the plate.
Okay.
And then I'll be at Deep Valley Book Festival in Mankato on the 7th of October.
I will also be at Deep Valley.
You will.
And Saturday, tomorrow, I'm at the Barnes & Noble on Lake Street in Minneapolis at 1 o'clock. Stop by,
yeah.
please.
Which is a very good location, by the way.
Yes, I did one there,
Yeah.
and that was a good one.
And then also in mid-October is the Twin City Book Festival at the State Fairgrounds on Saturday the 14th.
I think
Yeah,
so,
great
yeah.
taxi.
Yeah, we should talk about that because I think we'll all be displaying our books there. And,
I will be displaying as part of a authors marketing co-op that I helped establish about 1.5 years ago called Midwest Mystery Works. We will have a table there, and I think the 5 authors that are in that, 3 of us will be present.
And
So please stop
for
by.
anybody who's interested in local authors and writing, that Rain Taxi show at the State Fairgrounds is a tremendous opportunity for people to go not only meet and greet authors, get a chance to see their books. Many of them offered at discounts, I might say, and it's an interesting, surprising location.
Yeah. It is a chance to meet a wide array of authors, not just mystery authors, but authors of poets and memoirists and, a lot of different people to come and impress the flesh and talk to and learn about.
So you both spend so much time at these functions, which I don't. How do you have time to write?
It's always a problem. I mean, that's why it takes me about 10 months to do a first draft. I spend as much time marketing as I do that as writing, and so I think Newell writes faster than I do because it sounds like you turn out books much quicker than I do.
Well, I've had the stories in my head for quite a while, so it's
I've got more stories than I'll ever have time to tell them.
Yeah.
So that I understand.
But I haven't been doing a lot of promotion, so I have time to write. Kind of looking ahead, it's sort of, all right, what's the balance? Besides events, the rest of my life, which has a lot of other parts to it.
Yeah, there is that, isn't there?
There is that.
There is life beyond writing and trying to sell your books.
Yeah.
Now, you can write 5 or 6 hours a day.
Yeah,
What's your story?
I can do 5 or 6 hours a day. I have to remember to stop, take a break, and move some muscles. It's easier in the summertime to get outside. There's chores to do. But I also need to try to make time to read, and not only read books in English, but I also read them in Spanish. And that takes time.
Why?
Well, because I maintain my Spanish fluency.
Okay.
I like the way Mexican writers frame their stories. They're very different from English, from American stories. I've learned something about story craft from those, albeit I need a dictionary handy for some of the authors, particularly because they use Spanish that's not an everyday, like literary English writers. So there is that.
I'm trying to think of a Allende. What is Isabel Allende?
Isabel Allende.
I'm trying to think of any other well-known Spanish authors?
Well, there's Juan Rulfo, Octavio Paz, Carlos Fuentes, etc.
Okay. Can't say that I've read any of them, but
How do you know when your book is concluded? How many words do you start out really in mind, and how do you know when you've gotten there?
well, the industry sort of dictates to some extent. You know, a mystery thriller is supposed to be somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 words. So, you know, if you target 90,000, you're going to be right in the ballpark. If you go to a publisher with a 125,000 word mystery, they're going to give it to an editor who's going to tell you to cut 100,000 words or 25,000 words.
Unless your name is Grisham or one of those.
Yeah. I mean, there are those who dictate, and there are those of us who are dictated to. But so it really is. But how you ended, I was asked that question because I write from the seat of my pants. Well, how do you know when to end your book? I said, when the story's over. Yeah. I'll know when the story's over.
Well, I mean, when the story's over, and then the length of the story, and for me, I end up around 81,000 words. The heart of the story is a lot less than 80,000 words. So this draft I've been working on for the fourth novel, the guts of the story was about 60,000 words. However, and then I look at the 20,000 words and, okay, this is the opportunity to go back, to flesh out a scene, to flesh out a character, to bring something in that might not be critical, but it certainly adds to the moment.
And sometimes the publisher will help you in that regard and make suggestions in that regard, or somebody that you're working with. We have actually run out of time. This is Writer's Corner. We are very blessed to have two very talented writers with us. Newell Searle,
thank you,
from background of all fields. Rob Jung, who has so many talents that it's ridiculous. And music tells me that they're pushing us off the air. So thank you both for being here with Writer's Corner.
Alan, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you,
and
yes.
a chance to talk.